can technology help with one-on-one discipleship? That's the topic of this current Tab Media special report. I'm your host, Jennifer Rash, and joining me is Thomas Osborn, whom I've decided is a tech guru. He has lots of experience in technology and for the past decade has been using that in the church environment. So, Thomas is going to help us understand all this. Thank you for joining us, Thomas.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jennifer. It's an honor and privilege to be here, and I'm always happy to talk about technology and discipleship in particular.
All right. Okay. So, technology, not what we're thinking about as far as computer databases and that kind of thing inside the church. We're talking about technology and how that might help all of us in our personal disciple making, whether we're the one being discipled or the one trying to disciple, what that might look like in the community, artificial intelligence, all the different things. So I don't even know where to start, but I think the best place to start is to just give us a little glimpse about your experience and what you're doing in the world of artificial intelligence, technology, and how that's playing out in the faith-based elements.
Yeah, it sounds good. So I'm involved in quite a few different ways. Most of them arc around AI and the church, and specifically artificial intelligence and discipleship, because my heart is to kind of spend a lot of my energy on enhancing the process of one-on-one discipleship. I believe that was the Great Commission, and people learn and grow in lots of ways. One of them is by being mentored or discipled by another person
Mhm.
over a longer period of time. And that's kind of what I think technology could be helpful. Can't replace it. If anything, technology should lead towards personal in real life relationships. So I'm involved across lots of companies, a couple I founded, some I'm just part of related to technology and discipleship.
Okay. Okay. Give me a few of those names so we can all go and check them out.
So my day job, the company that I founded called DiscipleIQ, the purpose of that is to connect, encourage, and equip Christians that want to be engaged in one-on-one discipleship. And we have all kinds of things we do underneath that umbrella. Another one I've been part of first, we co-founded AI and Faith about 7 years ago now, and that is an organization, a not-for-profit organization, focused on how do we wisely steward artificial intelligence in use within faith communities and the world in general. So it's been a big part of my heart to help think about how to use these tools correctly in ways that promote love and arc towards honoring God. I'm involved in tangentially in a bunch of other companies. You've met me through Bible Chat because I've done
Okay.
work with them. I'm an advisor on Kingdom Analytics, which is a data analytics company focused on churches and faith-based organizations that want to understand their people better. Advisor for GMO, which is Global Media Outreach. They are an organization that's been using the Facebook and social media for years to do evangelism, and several others I could get into, but everything relates to AI and discipleship for me.
Hmm. All right. So, what's the scariest part of all of this as you dig into the technology side and I know you know what all's back there and all the different debates that are going on.
The scariest part for me is that this is an extremely powerful tool.
Right.
And do not underestimate how much AI is going to change the world. And you can decide you don't like that and stick your head in the sand, but I'm telling you, it's changing the world. It's like an atomic bomb. So I watched Oppenheimer, the movie, and I was so struck. I was like, oh my gosh, this is just like what we're doing with the AI. By the way, we thought this years ago. That's why we created AI and Faith. It's a bunch of people very committed to the Lord. And by the way, it's pluralistic, but most of us are Christians that started it. And we said, this is a big deal. We need to get our arms around this. What are the policies and procedures related to AI? How do we steward data correctly? And we know it's a big deal. Look, Congress is talking about TikTok right now. Why? Because they're harvesting our data, which could make us less competitive and potentially put us at threat from other nations. Instagram, they're thinking about passing laws for children. Why? AI is so powerful that it gets you addicted to your phone, and it gets our kids addicted, and it's manipulating our children. So I could go on and on about that. The scary thing is that the world will infiltrate the church and pollute us. So one of my hearts is that we find wise stewards of technology that will bring AI into the mix in church contexts, and we use it in the ways that God wants us to steward resources. Because by the way, AI is no different than wood or water or wind or anything else. It's a resource God gave us to steward. It's just the manipulation of matter. And in this case, it's binary code that turns into zeros and ones and it creates AI. And I
Mhm.
don't think it's ever going to have a soul. We could talk about that all day. It's never going to have a soul. Only God can breathe life into something. But can it be darn close to human? You bet it can. Could it
Mhm.
even trick us into thinking it's human? Yes, it could. So those are some of the scary things. Underneath all that is greed. And
Oh,
why
yeah.
things go haywire? Because men love power. And maybe
Mhm.
women do too, but I'm a man, so I'll speak to that. Men love power. And there's a lot of power in tech. And if we're not careful, we'll have a few people owning the entire church technology world. And when you get a lot of power, there can be issues quickly. So I do have concerns about that, but we can get into that in more detail later.
Yeah, makes sense. So the answer would not be then to run from it, try to act like it's not there. Um,
No, I think we'd be at risk of being the servant in the parable of the talents that buried his talents in the sand.
okay.
Remember that story? Jesus gave talents to, or God gave talents to three people. And he said, "Hey, go use these talents." Two of them did, and he said, "Good, well done, my good and faithful servant." One of them said, Gosh, you gave me these talents, and man, it's scary. It's a harsh world out there." And so what I did is buried it in the sand because I didn't want to lose it. And what did he do? He kicked him out. And I feel like AI is no different. Literally, God says, "Here's something you can steward, and it's powerful. If anyone thinks something differently, they're crazy, right? It is powerful."
Mhm.
And God's saying, "Okay, how do you steward this, kids? Here you go." And I literally see some people that are saying, "Oh, we could get sued, or you never know. Maybe this is the mark of the beast. I better not do anything with that."
Mhm.
And I feel like you're in danger. And I'm not saying you are, but you're in danger of being that person with those talents that buried it in the sand.
Mm. So for church leaders, then I know that they're going to have to deal with trying to figure out where that fits in their world. Church, well, it might be staff, it may be some of the lay leaders, but then also you've got your members and congregation that are just trying to make it every day with their families, and they are seeing their kids become addicted to their phones. Well, maybe even the parents addicted to the phones and getting drawn in and more and more. What would you suggest as far as where to start? Should the church leadership start with trying to help the families individually get a hold of what this looks like,
Oh
or
man.
should they
Um,
start with the pieces of what's available in the church world now, like you're talking about the matching, the discipling, and that kinds of thing?
Yeah, I'm not qualified to answer that question. I don't know. I can tell you where my heart is, and I am in church tech, and I am in tech, and I could have started any company I wanted, and I can go work for plenty. And maybe I couldn't, but I guess my assumption is that someone would want to hire me across a lot of these church tech companies. I'm focused on one-on-one discipleship for a reason, because that is a neglected area in the church. And it's a very effective way to help people become more like Jesus. And if we lean into technology in that regard, I think we have a chance of bearing more fruit and helping more people become more like Jesus and doing it more quickly and more efficiently, or at all. Because let's be frank, Barna research, 72% of people are involved in a discipling relationship at all right now in the North American church. So that's kind of where I think the church needs to start. But I think that's just me because I'm biased towards my little part of it.
Mm,
If you think about technology in the church, it could be helpful in almost any different arena. And
mhm,
every church is going to have different needs. So I think where they start is going to depend on the organization. Some of them are dying. They're small little churches with 50 people. How, and for me, you could think through that use case. I'm doing that with, well, we'll see if we do it. I got called by a large mainline denomination. I won't say which one, but it's dying. It's in the middle of a large city, owns like 15 acres of property and premium land. Used to have 2,000 people a week go to their church. Now there's 75, and they're all over 50, 75 years old or something. They're like, "How can we use technology to help our church?" So we're actually putting together a workshop on that very thing. Like, and if they'll do it, we pitched it and see if they want it. Yeah, how can we use tech? And one of the ways is gosh, there's lots of things you can think about, but how are we going to use AI to do that? So we're playing with those things. And in their situations can be a lot different than the mega church that's got 50, 20,000 people a week are going. They're going to use tech in a different way. So
Well, and that
there's,
that was one thing I thought of when you were talking is some churches are ready for whomever's coming in from off, out of the community, off the street. We're ready for you. We've got all of our systems in place. We've got all of our people in place, and all of that. And so I can see where the technology and the AI and the different things that you guys are putting together would be easily plugged right in. But that church you're talking about, the one where they're not keeping up, they're not finding their way to help the community anymore. For some reason, they're shrinking. Maybe no one has figured out exactly why, but that's happening. They would it doesn't seem like they would be ready for the big matching to say, "Hey, we're here, come join us." But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe where would that
well,
step be for
so
that
one,
church?
yeah, I mean, one, they're probably not going to deploy a lot of this technology because you can't just snap your fingers and it works. I mean, it's like anything. If you want to build a house, you have to think about the house you're going to build and make sure you complete it, lest you look like a fool.
Mhm.
So a lot of small churches with under 75 people maybe won't implement a lot of the tech that I'm focused on right now, but
Mhm.
how they can participate is they are people that might be willing to disciple people or be discipled, and they can be parts of the larger community. So what we're doing with Disciple IQ is our ideal use case is that you are discipled within the context of your local church under the authority and the pastoral care of your church community. But
Mhm.
the reality is there are plenty of people that go to churches where one, there's no one even qualified to really disciple them, or it's just not a good fit. The chemistry is not there. And by the way, discipleship is not that different than dating relationships. And people get upset with me, but let's be real. Sometimes you have connection and chemistry with certain people. You're like, yeah, I'd love to meet with this guy once a week for coffee. I really like him. I really gel with him. But that doesn't happen with usually maybe 50, 1 out of 50 people it happens with. So just look at the math involved with a small church that you may gel with no one that you really want to be either the mentor to that person or be mentored by that person. But where a small church could be involved in some of what we're up to is they can be part of a larger community then. And they can create a profile and say, yeah, we have a church full of 75-year-olds. And by the way, most of us would love to be serve in the kingdom. We would love to be part of something larger than ourselves. And yes, put my name on a list. And if I match with the right person, I'll be willing to disciple them. And that be in maybe in the context of the local church or maybe the local community. Because the way algorithmically we prefer people to do it, we give them a lot of power, but the preference is that you are able to meet with people in real life. I don't know that the neuroscience hasn't proven this yet, but my hunch is, or my hypothesis is that eventually we're going to prove that in real life relationship matters to human connection and human flourishing. So we've got this thing called the internet, and we're all using Zoom now. And supposedly you can go to Zoom church and work from remotely and never meet with people, and you're just as efficient. I think that's a bunch of crap.
Mm.
I think we're going to find out that in real life really matters. So we'll prioritize in real life relationships with Disciple IQ, which by the way is not what tech companies do. Why? Because they don't make money off you if you leave the platform and go hang out with each other. If you go to Starbucks and aren't on the platform, they're losing money. They want a model that keeps you right in front of the screen. And I think that's anathema to what maybe human flourishing needs.
Mm. That makes sense. That makes sense. Because I think about the congregations, and we have lots of congregations, we have lots of people of faith, and when you said that stat, that 72%, is that what you said? 72% of people are not in a mentoring relationship.
Yeah.
I want is that stat common? Is that what it's always been like, or is that
I'm not
growing?
sure that we cribbed that off Barna, and I think specifically it was 72% of people aren't in a discipleship relationship. And I think it was probably the American church. I'd have to go look at the study, but that's the number. And it resonates with me because we've been working with churches now ever since I started working on this. And I've been part of the church my whole life. I'm a PK, right? And I know just intuitively, most churches don't prioritize one-on-one discipleship. They all talk about it and say it's a good thing. But when you really, and I worked in church tech, so I worked with these churches, specifically the big ones, because they had the most money and they would bring us in and all that good stuff. Usually they've got metrics for butts and seats. They know exactly how many people go each week. They know exactly what has happened with their tithing. They know exactly what's happening with all their programs and their initiatives. They know exactly what's happening with their buildings and their building campaigns. When you say things like, okay, what's really happening with discipleship? They get this, usually they're like getting uncomfortable look because they know it's important, but they don't really know how to talk about it.
Mhm.
And a lot of times what happens, they'll say, well, that we definitely have that happening, but it's kind of organic. People just kind of get together and have coffee. And you find they never say it's organic, their tithing program. That's usually pretty cut and dried. Yeah, we've got this
Right.
system that does this, and we have a campaign every year for these three things. They're really keened in on that. And by the way, they're usually really keened in on how many people go to their church. But the
They,
discipling, that kind of just is an organic thing that happens on the sides. Why? Because it's not the business of church.
well, and it's also it's messy and it's time consuming, and it means we have to sacrifice things we might want to do on our own to be in
Bingo.
those relationships. And I would guess too, I know it could be intimidating because I mean, what if the person asks a question that I don't know how to answer? Or what if you know, I'm not as knowledgeable in the Bible as maybe others thought that I was, or something like that. I think it could be intimidating too.
Yeah, I
Um,
think it is. I mean, and I'm not trying to belittle how difficult the messiness of life is.
mhm,
What we know is that we're trending towards isolation and loneliness. It just
right.
is a macro trend. There's lots of stats to talk about this. In Disciple IQ, again, part of the heartbeat of this was one, no one's really building tech for it because you don't really make money on it. I mean, I'm not doing this because it's a money winner. Yeah, it's not. But the point is, we're trying to bring something to arc people back towards in real life relationships. And you
Mm,
can call it discipleship, but plenty of people are probably just being like, I'm kind of lonely. I'd like to be mentored by someone just because, I'm moved into town and I'm brand new. Their
mm,
MO isn't really like, gosh, I want to be discipled because so I can become more like Jesus and thrive and flourish as a Christian. It's like, no, I just graduated from college. I moved to town. This mega church says they have a mentoring program. I'm going to do it because I'm lonely and I'd like to meet new people.
mhm.
And by the way, they might be mentored by 10 people, and it's going to be like kind of like they do with any network in a relationship. I'm sure our tool will be used that way. And I'll say, good, no worries, because guess what? We have to also trust the spirit that the spirit of God is going to get in those relationships and breathe life into them. And discipling happens in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and something you said earlier really resonated with me about how many people are still, they have so much to give, they have so much wisdom, they have so much life experience. They would love to just share, 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 share. But as I've heard several people who have retired say, people used to ask my opinion. People used to come to me for advice. No one calls anymore. And I think how sad that all of that's there, that wisdom is there, the
Yeah.
energy's there. Now that maybe a little more time is even there. Um, but it's like it gets
That would
cut off somehow. And if we could bring that back together,
Yeah,
uh,
that's one of our goal. We've got lots of things happening under this umbrella called Disciple IQ, but one of them is creating a database of people like that are willing and able to disciple. So we're going to Lausanne next week. Actually, tomorrow we leave,
oh,
and
great.
it's the beginning of launching a campaign to do just that. How can we attract some of these people, have the time and the bandwidth? Say, yeah, of course I'd mentor someone. Of course I'd spend half an hour a week with someone if I thought it was a wise match and it was bounded a little bit so that it's not just totally rando, right? Because if you say to someone, "Hey, go meet him for coffee," and give them no guidance, they're like, "Oh, that's weird and awkward." But
Yeah.
if it's something like this person is selected you because they said they'd like to be mentored to understand how to become more like Jesus, and we'll have parameters in there. Some are going to be like, "Hey, I have a," because you can go in the system and say, really, I'm looking for someone to disciple me from a workplace perspective because I just became a doctor
Mm,
and I just moved to this town. I don't know that many Christian doctors. And I just like someone who's 10 years older, who's a Christian doctor, who can help me think about how do I become more like Jesus in the context of my medical job.
right.
And that's, a highfalutin doctor, but it could also be, I just became, hey, I just moved to town. I'm an electrician, you know. I'd love to be mentored by a Christian electrician because I just became one. And someday I'd love to start my own electrician company. Who knows, right? Or a mom, I mean, my hope is that women are going to say, yeah, I want to be mentored by someone that, has three kids and she still has a job and she's figuring out how to make all this craziness work And I want to be mentored by her so I don't make the same mistakes that maybe she made. She can just share with me what she did.
Right.
On and on it goes with the ways this could be used.
Well, in a lot of the churches that I'm around, there's a concept of it would happen within that church family. So someone in the church family should mentor someone else there, or in the community surrounding the church, somewhere close by. So with Disciple IQ, would it keep it into a certain parameter of
We'll
location,
give
geography? What is
well,
that like?
yes, we're thinking through this because when you architect a system, you have to decide what the values of it are and what the parameters are.
Okay.
And what we would like to do is give as much control to the users, and the user in this case might be the church itself. Because the church might say, yeah, we want to set up an instance of Disciple IQ, and we only want people to be discipled from within our church. So they'll create the database of mentors or
Okay.
disciplers.
Okay.
And when you log in, you'll only see people from your church that they vetted. So I'm working with a mega church now. They'll go through there and say, here are the 700, because they're big. Here are the 700 people we've deemed to be, like elders or disciplers or whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
That's one way you can engage. But I can tell you that in my life, if my life's any example, I have a spiritual board of directors, I call it. I've literally got like 10 mentors in my life, and they're all there for very different reasons. I had someone mentoring me on how to be a father to sons, right? And he didn't go to my church. He lived, 20 minutes, 40 minutes away. I had another person that was mentoring me specifically from how do we deal with like Wall Street type people as a follower of Jesus. These guys are just greedy jerks. How do we think about this? Because I'm doing these deals for them. I'm making rich people richer for a living, and I need someone to help me think about that. So on and on it goes. And by the way, almost none of these people are in my local church. I went to a church for 200 people. I'm not a mega church guy. Nothing. You can be a mega church person. That's fine. I like smaller churches.
Mm.
But the problem with that is that a lot of what I need on a daily basis to live out my faith and flourish and bear fruit is with people beyond my church, my local church. So I say a lot to say we're building into Disciple IQ the ability to participate in an ecosystem as well.
Okay.
So you could be church one and says, hey, yeah, if you can't find a discipler in my church for this person, that's our ideal, then revert to our community. And you can even put parameters even further and say, oh, I only want them to be SBC, or I only want them to be Presbyterian, or pick your flavor, right? We're going to argue all till Jesus comes back about all this stuff, but you can allow people to control that front. And people are going to become disciplers or be discipled through parachurch or with another organization. I won't say names right now because all this is pretty new, but very large group focused on mentoring men. And it's a parachurch group because there's thousands of guys who don't go to church ever, and they're not going to. And these are Christians who are saying, these people matter. We're going to mentor them. And I'm going to go, they're going to do this. Why? Because they want to connect with me as a person, but I'm really mentoring them to become more like Jesus. That's my MO. They're going to be in our system too. So we're going to work with parachurches, faith-based schools and churches and business as mission, all of which will create databases, if you will, of disciplers or mentors that people could be matched to.
Mm.
And you as a user could again do it within the context of your local church, or you might say, no, I want to open myself to anyone within a 25-minute drive of my house. And you
Okay.
might be matched across that whole world of things.
I can see where this could truly be an outreach opportunity, as well as trying to just say everybody we already know. We all need a mentor to be discipled. We all can be mentoring and helping to disciple um, to certain levels anyway. And then, wow, what about the community at large? They're not in church. Some of the ones that are not in church, could this be the first step
Yeah,
toward,
you
um,
could. I
you
mean,
know?
I can tell you what, when you architect a piece of technology, you have to think again about the use cases and in human-centered design, which is something I kind of love.
Mm.
We're architecting it and thinking about it from the context of a Christian who wants to be discipled.
Mhm.
Now, can you think about it in other ways? Yes. So my hunch is our systems and tools will be used for people that are literally just, they're not even a Christian, they just are lonely. And or they're just, maybe they're just like, look, man, my buddy told me like there's like 50 lawyers in this database that are willing to mentor you. And I just graduated from law school, and shoot, man, I just saw them. These guys are one of the best firms in town. These are some power lawyers. And they didn't care about Christianity, but they just want to be mentored by that man or woman. That'll happen. People will figure this out because people are smarter. But in my opinion, if you're in our system, and this is, we're gonna have to develop some level of control. It's because you want to help people become more like Jesus. We're not gonna dumb that down at all. This isn't gonna be skinned as a secular product that can help the whole world or be seeker sensitive. And yes, could you do that with a piece of tech? Sure. That's not my heart for DIQ. Someone's gonna, I'm sure if this is successful, hopefully they'll copy our model and use it in secular contexts to do just that. But our heart is for the church, by the church, to help people become more like Jesus.
Mm. I love that. I love the concept of connecting. I love the concept of connecting, uh, because I think that is something that is lost right now with how do I find, if I want to be mentored, I want to be discipled, how do I find that person if it just didn't happen naturally? And then if I'm a person wanting to share and help someone grow, how do I find that? So this is a neat way to connect those dots.
Yeah, and that's the hope, is we'll do it. I mean, my dream is we eventually partner with places like AA and others from the faith angle that, they assign sponsors and mentors. You could do that through this system and just be a little wiser about it. Um, so I could go on and on. I'm not sure what you want
Okay.
me to share with your audience is, I guess, where my heart is.
Yeah. No, I love the concept of finding the next season, I guess, next phase of disciple making, and just very interested in how you're working through that. And but I'm also very curious about all the stats that are showing the loneliness and the
Yeah,
isolation and
yeah,
all that's coming. And I think our churches really do need to be aware of that, and they need to think through that. And what does that mean? Whether or not that's following up and looking at Disciple IQ or not, I don't know. But at least, at the very least, to realize their communities around them. There's lots of pockets of people who need Jesus, but also need to grow in their faith. And these are
yeah.
good things to be
And
thinking about.
I mean, it's about Jesus for me, but at the end of the day, it's also just about being in real relationships. I live in Seattle, which is a really kind of a maybe a bellwether for the world, but we look at all the tech people, we call them tech bros around here, and the joke is some of these people never even talk to people. They literally work from home in their house. They order Uber Eats all day long. When they're done working, they jump online to play Netflix or to watch Netflix or play video games. They walk their dog, and you'll see them. They're on their phone their whole time. They never even talk to anyone.
Wow.
You can live in a totally isolated world right now. You don't need to talk to anyone. You literally, you don't even go to the grocery store. You order your food on Amazon, it gets delivered, your groceries and
You're right. You're right.
all I'm saying is it's there definitely an arc towards isolationism and loneliness in people that we're trying to help with,
Mhm.
um, in whatever way we can. And we're a small part of that. Church is a huge part, by the way. One of the biggest blessings of being in a church community is the chance to go fellowship with people in real life, right? If you really engage.
Makes sense. Okay. Well, I'll put some links in the show notes if listeners want to explore a little bit more and find out more about what you're doing and what's out there. But Thomas, thank you for helping us just think about these things and understand a little bit more about what's realistic right now and what's happening and what we really do need to be focused on.
All right. Well, hey, yeah, you're welcome. And if you ever want to chat again, I'd be more than happy to. I mean, especially if you get a little more tailored feedback from your listeners and what do they really want to hear about, because that'll be helpful to us too as we develop this. So
Mm.
please stay in touch.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Take care.